subtitle is On Holy Ground, but really what I want to talk about is just being. And I wanted to begin with a reading from a book that's titled Barefoot on Holy Ground by a lady named Gloria Karpinski. And it's the introduction to the book. And she says, "Take off your shoes. The place where you stand is holy ground, said God to Moses. It is now being said to you and me. Let go of the past. Let go of limitation and pretensions. Stand barefoot wherever you are, and you'll see that every space and every moment is sacred. You can no more separate the sacred where you are sitting at this moment than you could separate the instrument from the musician or the moon from moonlight. To walk in reverence and humility is to walk barefoot on holy ground. Our feet represent our understanding, our foundations, and our groundedness in the dimension. There is no greater point of power than the one within yourself. There is no more sacred ground than where you are standing today. No more significant fact in evolution than the one you are looking at, than the one you are looking into, whether it's the one in the mirror, the one across from breakfast, or the conference table, or the one you pass in the street. I now invite you, take off your shoes and walk with me on holy ground." And so for me, there's, I suppose, a lot of ways to interpret that, and how I wanted to interpret it today is to speak about being on holy ground by being present, by paying attention, and by just remembering, because how else can we, it's kind of hard to remember. You're always on sacred ground if you're not paying attention, because I know it doesn't always feel like we are. And I think it was in 1990, there was a magazine article in Unity magazine, and the author said, there are many places in the world that are sacred to different religions. And we can visit them, and we can be inspired. And I just actually thought of this right now. When my former wife and I lived in Pennsylvania, the church we attended a Catholic church, and across the street from the church there was a chapel. And this chapel had special significance for us. And I don't know what it was, but anytime we went in there, we felt we were on sacred ground. And so sometimes when we would be running like nuts during the day, we had 3 kids and going crazy, sometimes we would just pass that chapel and one of us would say, "Pull in," because they always kept the door open 24/7. And we could just go in and sit and close our eyes, and in 20 minutes or so go out and feel peaceful for the next 3 minutes until one of the kids did something. But now the point for me is I realized it was really wonderful, but we can recreate that anywhere. And that's what this Unity article went on to speak about, that we can visit these places and be inspired. But the truth is, anywhere we go is holy ground, particularly if we're willing to be open to it and to treat it like that. And we don't need to travel anywhere to commune with God, because God is present everywhere that we are. And all we need to do to experience that presence is to take a breath and become aware of the presence that's within and around us all the time. And Ernest Holmes speaks about this a lot. And I just picked a quote today, and he said, "When we realize that God is personal to all who are receptive to the divine influx, we can communicate with it and receive a direct answer." So he's saying, when we allow ourselves to be receptive, when we open ourselves to it, when we stop, which I'll talk about a little bit, and allow that divine presence to come in and through us, we can communicate with it. And when we do that, we can expect an answer, because the kingdom of God, they talk about the kingdom of God all over the Bible, and it's not It's not a place. It's not, at least we don't believe it's a place. We believe it's a state of being. And when we pay attention to our life, and when we remember that and we're all connected, then we can realize that we're always standing on sacred ground. So a fellow named Guy Finley wrote an article on awaken attention, and in the article he tells a story about a young woman who inherits an antique jewelry box from her grandmother. And so she takes it, I guess, when you probably it didn't mean much to her, because she's young and an antique box, but she takes it and she puts it on her bureau and she leaves it there. She doesn't pay much attention to it. And what she doesn't realize is that her grandmother hid a priceless ring in a secret compartment in that jewelry box. And it's this young woman's ring to have it any time she knows where to look. And the question is, will she? Will she at some point take some time to go through that jewelry box? And Finley makes the point. It's like our life story, that hidden within us, and yet, like the jewelry box, within plain sight, is this unmatched power of brilliance that is with us all the time. And the question for you and me is, will we find it? Will we find that brilliant power? And the other part of it is, it's kind of hard to be mindful when you're always running around and when you're always multitasking. And I thought about that this week. I must have read more articles in the last few months, spiritual articles that take shots at multitasking. So there must be something about that, about how multitasking really throws us off. And somebody else I read this week, a lady named Barbara Bizigue, said that if you don't believe that, take a look. And I think about this a lot when I'm out with Becky. Take a look the next time you go to a park, or you go to the airport, or particularly I notice it in restaurants. Take a look at how many people are addicted to their iPhones. I don't know how many times Becky and I have been in restaurants, and you don't really know, but we see a couple and they look like a young couple that's out on a date, or maybe even newly married, and they don't even know the other person's name. They might as well be at separate tables because each one is texting away and looking down, and that's what she's talking about. And I have to tell you, I thought about this when Becky, the last time Becky and I went to visit my daughter doesn't have TV, and they don't get any newspapers, so you really have to make your own fun. And anyway, one night when we were sitting there, my daughter said to us, "Wow, you guys are really attached to your iPhones," because we were sitting there the whole time, just like these teens, because I guess that's what we did. It's easy to fall into. And this Barbara lady said that she was going on a vacation one year, and she made the conscious choice not to take her cell phone. And she was really great with it until she got to the airport. And then she got to the airport and she said to herself, "Oh, I don't have my cell phone. I wonder if that's really okay. I'm going to be out of touch for 10 days. And she really started to get really upset that she had made that decision. And she said it actually took her like 3 or 4 days, and it was too late then, but it took her 3 or 4 days on the vacation to come to terms with the fact that she had left her cell phone there. And it made me think, when we're going to go on vacation in a couple of weeks, and I always take my cell phone, but I leave it in the room, and I try to convince myself, one time a day you can look at your messages, just once. So I usually do it twice, but that's pretty good, because I usually do it 100 times a day. But how attached we could get, and when we are, we're just not in the moment. We're not where we need to be in terms of remembering how we're always in a sacred place. And so, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever gotten a great idea while you're taking a shower, or while you're walking your dog, or maybe when you just wake up before you get out of bed in the morning, and you get these great ideas. And what all of those things, what they have in common is that they're not busy times. They're quiet times when we're just with ourselves. I can remember when Beck and I had a dog, and I would walk him by myself. I mean, what else could you do but be by yourself? Because he wasn't a good conversationalist. and so those are the moments sometimes when you're just at peace. And I read something by a lady named Barbara Hedberg, and she said that she had read some scientific results of tests that people that studied the brain had run, and what they found was that when we give ourselves contemplative time, that the both sides, our left side and our right side of our brain, that they're more able to synchronize when we give ourselves some quiet time, and that synchronization of our brains leads to facilitating our ability to be more creative. So in other words, when we give ourselves time to be quiet and just be like, sitting on the dock, that it can lead to us being more creative. And I was thinking, that another Bible quote, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am God means quiet. Just be quiet. Stop wherever you are and be. And just be. So, some of you, when Beck and I first got here, we taught a class on mysticism, which I would really like to do again. And there were two books, a book by Joel Goldsmith and just a really great book by Carolyn Mays called Entering the Castle, Finding Your Path to God and Your Soul's Purpose. And Goldsmith was a New Thought person, and Carolyn Mays is Catholic. And she has this wonderful take. And in a part of the book, she talks about doing a workshop one time and asking a whole series of questions. And I'm just going to do 3 of the questions and then tell you how the group came out. So one of the questions was, how conscious do you want to be? How conscious do you want to be? And the second question was, why is it so hard to act according to your beliefs? Why is it so hard to act according to your beliefs? And the third question, this one is my favorite. I only picked 3, but given the chance to have more money or more consciousness, which would you take? Given the chance to have more money or more consciousness, which would you take? And she wrote 99% of the audience. What do you think they picked? Money. I was going to try it here, but I figured everybody would lie and say consciousness. And so then she kind of left it open, and there were more questions. And she said one really brave guy got up and started to answer the question, started to speak to her. And here's some of what he said. He said, if I were more conscious and doing the work to be more conscious, I would resent other people. Because I would always have to be the one doing the forgiving. And they get to stay resentful. So, he's saying, if I were more conscious, I'd have to be a better person, and they wouldn't have to be. And he said, and so the more unconscious, another thing he said to her is, the more unconscious you are, the more fun you can have. So I guess you can do whatever you want, and it's, you can have a lot of fun and not feel bad about it. And he said, and then he said, and this guy must have been really honest to get up in front of a whole group and say this. He said, I'm not ready to be compassionate to everybody. I'm really not. It's really, to be honest, he said, it's just too hard to be conscious. To work harder all the time than the people that are unconscious. You know, I'd have to work harder all the time, and there could be other people that are just running around being unconscious. And the thing that she wrote after this, and I didn't do everything, but the thing she wrote after it is that the vast majority of the audience, of the people in the workshop, were shaking their head. They all agreed with them. They all agreed. All of this stuff that, you know, I don't want to forgive, I don't want to be conscious, it's more fun to be unconscious, you know, all of that, they agreed. And she said what was interesting to her was they could discuss the metaphysical concept. They could discuss this metaphysical concept that we're all interconnected. They could talk about it, but they couldn't make it in their personal lives. They couldn't make it real in their personal lives. So they could go, you know, to book study groups, whatever, and talk about how, you know, we're all connected, we're all one, I'm God, you're God. But then when they left, they couldn't make it real in their own lives. And you know, they couldn't really make it real that we're all standing on holy ground. And the fact is, that's what practice is for. You know, last week I said, Michael Beckwith said, if you want to be transformed, the 3 words are practice, practice, practice. And that's what it is. To become more conscious is to practice it, to embody the consciousness, to live in a place of congruence with what comes out of your mouth and how you live and speak and act on them. And Carolyn May said that most of us really aren't open to having the presence of God in our lives. That most of us really don't want that, because, you know, as these people were kind of proving in our workshop. I know it's a small sample, but she said, you know, most people, when you speak to them, they're not, because most people fear having an intimate relationship with God, unless it's on their terms. And she said their terms means that when we need help, we want it exactly when we need it. We want it exactly as we need it, and we don't want it to cause a lot of uncomfortableness in our lives. You know, we don't want God to be putting us out. And what she said is to be a mystic without a monastery, which is kind of one of the themes in her book, that we're really all mystics without a monastery, and we just need to grow into that role. To be that means to make a conscious decision to stop being motivated by fear, and to replace that fear with compassion and faith. And that when we do that, when we're willing to do that, then we become an instrument of God's grace. It must have been close to a year ago on a Wednesday night. Now, most of you won't know because nobody comes to our movies on Wednesday night. We keep hearing, what do you want to see on Wednesday? People say movies, and last week Joe came, which is great. We were glad. We had a great discussion. But anyway, we showed a movie called The Way about a year ago, and it starred Emilio Estevez and his dad, who's Martin Sheen, and it was about somebody taking a walk on the Camino del Santiago, which is a path, a walk, a pilgrim's path that people take in Spain. And it takes most people about, I guess, 4 or 6 weeks to do it. It's a 500-mile trek. And it's gotten to be very, very big in spiritual circles. And so somebody was writing this week, somebody I read this week was writing that here's what it means to walk the Camino de Santiago. The person said it means bunk beds, stunning landscapes, world-class snorers, hot, searing sun, freezing cold rain, kindness from strangers, debilitating injuries, unexpected romances, no toilet paper when you really need it, profound grief and deep doubt, hunger, laughing with new friends, total exhaustion. And he or she, whoever wrote it, said you're guaranteed to experience all of that when you walk this ancient pilgrim's path. And the reason I share it is because many spiritual writers say that it's a metaphor. Walking that path is a metaphor for life, because people do it in all different ways. And the movie that we showed, by the way, what happened is Martin Sheen and Emilio have a falling out. And Emilio makes the decision, the young boy, well, he's not so young, makes the decision to walk the path, and he dies. He dies. And Martin, his dad, decides to complete the walk. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful story. But the basis of what I was speaking about here is that the reason people see it as a metaphor for life is because each person needs to find their own way to walk the path. And there's no right way to walk it, and there's no wrong way. People do it in all different kinds of ways. And each of us can do our own Camino without ever having to leave our house. You know, we don't have to walk the 500 miles to discover ourselves. I'm sure it's a really great experience, but we don't have to do that to find ourselves. Any of us can go within and find ourselves by being mindful. And mindful living is remembering the role that we play in life. And one of our religious science ministers named Dennis Merritt Jones said mindful living is remembering who we are, remembering where we are, remembering why we are on this journey. And then he said something I really, really liked. He said it's a lifestyle. I really like that. It's a lifestyle. Being aware of spirit in everything we do. In everything we do. I saw something this week by somebody, maybe some of you have heard of this person, El Mora, M-O-R-Y-A. Anybody? It's the thing I read said that El Mora is an exalted teacher, and there's a woman who channels him, and I had never heard of him. And what she wrote was that he said to her that surrendering to God's love is not giving up your individuality. It's not giving up your individuality. That when we do that, we add to it. And he said there's a difference between surrender and submission. He said when you submit, you give up your power. When you surrender, you permit God to empower you even more and to encourage you to, in a most profound way, to climb even higher. So when we surrender to God, we're not giving up that power, but we're allowing God to come into our life in a greater and greater way. And when that happens, we become empowered. So this week I was reading something by a lady named Joan Gattuso. And she's very interesting. She's a Buddhist person who also happens to be a unity minister. And she was writing on mindfulness. And she was saying what mindfulness is, it's awakened attention. It means to be awake, to be aware, and to live as a conscious human being. And she said that at one point in her life, she became kind of depressed. And she went from a size 8 to a size 12, which I guess that's like a lot. And she said so she started, when she realized that when she came out of it that she wanted to lose the weight, so she started to do private workouts with a trainer, with actually more than one trainer. And she said so the weight started to come off. She said, I lost 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. And one trainer noticed when she lost 50 pounds. One person that was her trainer noticed, and she said, you know, I could see if I went from 400 to 350 pounds, but I was a small person. And she said that they began what the other trainers in her made it, or the one trainer that noticed, they made it a game to see how soon it would be before anybody else noticed that this relatively short person had lost 50 pounds, because they were just not aware. And so I want to tell you another story about this. And the person that I'm going to talk about asked me to repeat a number of times that I'm not picking on her. That she actually asked me to tell you this story when she knew what I was going to talk about. I swear, this is really the truth. She kept coming to me saying, don't get yourself in trouble tomorrow. Tell them I told you to do it. You're not picking on me, okay? So it's about awareness. So most nights, Becky gets in bed before I do, but this one night this week, it just happened a few nights ago, I get into bed first. Becky comes in after me, and when she gets in bed, she goes, oh, and she's really in pain. And I said, oh my God, what happened? And she said, oh, it's my toe. And I said, what happened? And she said, oh, I hit my toe, and it's all black and blue, okay? And I said, when? When'd you do that? She said, I don't know, I don't remember. And I said, where did you do it? And she said, I don't know, I don't remember. Now, I've broken my toe twice doing that. It is so painful. I did it 3 years ago. I remember exactly where I did it, where I was. So by now I'm sitting up in bed because I'm also getting scared because I had just finished reading an article on early onset Alzheimer's. and I said to her, is this a joke? And she said, no. I said, tell me the truth. Where was I when you did? She said, I don't know, because I don't remember when I did it. And I said, this house isn't that big. What did you hit? And she said, I don't know. And we actually talked, and then I could see she was getting really scared, so I stopped. And the next day, she literally wrote it out and said to me, I want you to talk about it when you talk about being mindful. She said, because I really thought about it, and it did shake me up. Your reaction to my not remembering really shook me up. And she said, what I thought about it occurred to me that, like a lot of people, I'm a walking zombie. That was her word. I'm a walking zombie. She said, I move so often in and out of life, but I'm not awake, and I'm not mindful. And she said, you know, I'm not mindful about what I'm doing, and I actually maybe broke my toe, and I can't remember. It probably only happened 2 days before. I can't really remember when or where or what, you know, and I've got a whole toe that's totally black and blue. And she said, what I think happens is, I think about the future. I'm thinking about the future, and, you know, this multitasking, and what I need to do next. And then my toe hurts, and it disappears, because I go on to something else. And the point is that right mindfulness and remembering that everywhere we are is sacred, because that divine presence is always with us. It's seeing what's going on right before us. It's what's happening right now before our eyes and ears. And it means giving conscious attention to ourselves and to the other people that are in our lives, because we can't remember that where we stand is sacred ground if we don't do that. So I wanted to close with a reading from a book by Wayne Muller called Being, Having, and Doing Enough. And he wrote, Jesus said, Make your home in me as I make mine in you. When we allow this world of 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows to fully and honestly find room in our heart, there is a holy alchemy that erupts within us. Grace and healing grow and flourish right before our sorrows, and our faithful heart gently cradles them all. The spacious sufficiency of our heart can teach us the next true thing and plant the seed that grows after the fire. Being present with ourselves, making choices from our own quiet wisdom, finding sanctuary deep within us, gives birth to a beginner's life. Gives birth to a beginner's life toward an unknowable destiny on a path created by our every moment of walking it. All we do is set the course of our heart's desire by the star of our own choosing. Certain we will change course 1,000 times before ever reaching the distant shore, the dream of our soul. A life of enough is born in every moment, in the way we listen, the way we respond to the world, the way we see what is and tell the truth of who we are. Every single choice, every single moment, every change of course can bring us closer to a life of peace, contentment, authenticity, and easy sufficiency. A life of being, having, and doing enough. God bless you. Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful week.